Hello ladies and gentlemen, today's video I want to follow up on the video I made a few days ago talking about how I think Firefly deserves a Novaflare. Now keep in mind, this is not me saying that other characters don't deserve it, if not more than Firefly. It's just me saying she does deserve a Novaflare, right? You can still be strong and have a multitude of issues in your base kit, Phanon, right? And you should probably get Novaflared and fix those things up. However, that's going to be for another video in the future, right? I want to tackle a few of the arguments people used against me when it came to trying to defend Firefly not getting a Novaflare. So let's get into it. One of the first arguments is that removing Dahlia is unfair because it's like removing Kafka from Dot. Now, this is just a false equivalency, right? Nowhere near the same. For one, Dot is a one-team archetype and nothing else, right? There's no other contending DPSs for this team. In fact, there's barely any contending supports in the slightest or characters in general. When it comes to break, there's multiple break DPSs, and there can be more break DPSs going into the future, right? So, with this being the case, Firefly's value on a break team with Dahlia is not the same as, let's say, a Heistlands. The next option to Heistlands in a Dot team is so astronomically worse that most people wouldn't even think twice or consider it, right? On top of this, Heistlands has arguably some of the best vertical investment for the entire Dot team to take advantage of, which also further increases her value for those who aren't afraid to go into things like Eidolons. Firefly, this does not apply to, right? Fugue, and as well as the Dahlia combo, do not rely on having Firefly on their team to be able to comfortably clear endgame content in the slightest. In fact, this was a point I brought up in my video. Against Pure Fiction, the standard banner character, who has nothing to do with break from 1.x Himiko, is better than Firefly, right? When it comes to MOC, even though there isn't anyone better than Firefly, there are those who are still incredibly effective, such as Hunt March 7th, able to get a 4 cost 0 cycle against Harbinger of Death, who is on the current MOC, right? You as well have APOC clears. Himiko has incredible 0 cycle APOC clears without needing all that much crazy investment at around the 5 to 6 cost range. There's also Misha 0 cycling with this, wombo combo of Dahlia and Fugue. I hope I can get across how massive the difference is here. If you were to replace Heistlands in a Dot team at like 4 or 5 cost level, you would not be getting this performance with like some random 4-star DPS across all the endgame contents the same way Dahlia and Fugue can, and that is a sign that a majority of the value in a break team is not currently tied to its DPS. This isn't only a Firefly problem, this is a Dahlia issue with how overtuned they made her to compensate for how weak all the DPSs in it are. This combo of these two is so good, it can wheelchair anybody to a being able to clear endgame content decently easily if you build them correctly and get the right investment, right? So, Firefly, in my opinion, yes, does deserve a Novaflare. Her getting low cost 0 cycles against MOC does not change my mind. This is like saying Phanon doesn't deserve a Novaflare when Phanon probably has the clunkiest kit among the entirety of the Amphorius DPSs. Yes, he has some of the best base damage numbers to make up for this, and some of the strongest early Eidolon investment in the game to make up for this. However, his E0 base issues, and especially his team issues, are really showing, right? They really show themselves in a Phanon team, and that ends up needing to get fixed. The exact same thing applies to Firefly. She consumes too many skill points at base, right? On top of this, she is way too reliant on Dahlia. If you remove a Dahlia, then it feels completely shit. It feels astronomically worse, right? However, not only this, she also wants extra turns. Her E2 has basically been the main thing carrying her for a long time now at this point. One of the few V2 DPSs who still has an E2 investment that people praise to this day. Now, it's nowhere near as strong as something like Phenon E1 and E2 jump. However, it's still a strong jump nonetheless, because an extra turn and break can make the difference between doing significantly more damage from proccing multiple more breaks, right? This extra turn needs to get added in base kit. On top of this, in my opinion, they will likely add a speed buff in her updated E1 when she gets Novaflared to make it easier to hit certain speed thresholds for her. Because despite all these Firefly zero cycles a lot of people will bring up, and that I'm bringing up currently, that are better than some of these other, DPSs, Firefly zero cycles usually require some of the most disgusting speed tuning on her. And some people even just run Phenon's light cone on her for the big speed increase to make it easier to reach this investment, because of how unrealistic it is to hit that final speed threshold on her to make her get these low cost zero cycles a lot of people really like to use, right? It's either or. Either you get Phenon's light cone to make it a lot easier, because Phenon's light cone I believe gives 12 more speed, or you end up getting some of the most min-max relics of all fucking time to hit this speed threshold, right? On top of this, Firefly, or just Break in general, is one of the teams that benefits the most from being ran sustainless against endgame content. The only other one that even comes close to this is probably Phenon, since especially now that double action Vancer is significantly more viable, I imagine he can live for probably 2 or 3 ultimates, even without a Cyrene in sustainless, if played correctly and the enemy lineup isn't some doo-doo garbage. Right. However, my point is, if you add a sustain into this Firefly team, watch the performance drop off a absolute fucking cliff. Right. Now, yes, other teams' performances also drop off with sustain, like Phenon with Donhung PT. However, it is not as Jurassic as it is with these Firefly zero cycles. On top of this, most of these Firefly zero cycles, they love their S5 DDDs, if not multiple S5 DDDs. Right, and that shit is not the easiest thing to obtain these days. That is 10 copies of a 4-star light cone that you have a less than 1 in 3 chance of getting per 10 pull on a banner, right? I hope you guys can understand where it is exactly I'm getting at with all of this. Even though Firefly is a great zero cycler, one of the greatest currently, most of that value can be easily attributed towards the wheelchair break comp of Fugue and Dahlia as compared to Firefly, because there are other 4-star and standard DPSs who are also achieving absurd levels of performance against endgame content, running these two on their team and not giving a shit about Firefly. And Firefly still has a multitude of base kit problems that do need to be addressed that I find very similar to Phenon. And at the end of all of this, the most obvious answer to why Firefly is getting preferential treatment in a Novaflare is her popularity. This is something that Anon leaks leaked like back in 3.6 or 3.7. They were one of the first people to leak that Firefly would not only get a new teammate, but also get a Novaflare in early 4.x. They added a reason when people were mad about this at the time. Why isn't it Rappa? Why isn't it Boot Hill? Apparently, Hoyo has official statistics that Firefly mains are 99% more active as compared to as compared to Rappa and Boot Hill mains combined, right? So when people ask, why isn't it that Rappa's getting Nova flared? Why isn't it that Boot Hill is getting Nova flared? They're weaker than Firefly. You are right. I'm not saying you aren't. However, popularity, unfortunately, plays a significant part in how early you end up getting Nova flared. And so in my opinion, this is another reason why Phenon will probably get Nova flared in 5.x. So let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Do you disagree with me? Do you think I'm like blindly hating on Firefly or something? I'm feeling a lot better as of late, so no longer am I feeling like as frustrated or just randomly angry at people's opinions I disagree with. Once again, I made a video on this recently. I really do apologize for that. This Yao Guang shit really got on my nerves as of late, and I've been healing since I've realized that. Right. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.